Hi everyone, welcome to today's Daily Sip. A little bit later than usual. I've had a bit of a wheelchair malfunction and my chair has literally broken and won't turn on, and therefore I can't move around. So in trying to fix it, it took me a bit longer, and in the end, Kasha had to put me on freewheel and just push me into the lounge to do today's episode. So I will worry about trying to get my independent after today's episode, but again, apologies for the slight delay. So today we're going to be looking around mental health and Rich Copson's story of having anxiety in the past, but also things that he's done to help with, coping with embracing disability as it's set in for his personal story, but also looking at access rating, which is something that Rich has co-founded. So welcome for today, Rich. Thanks for joining.
Hi, hello everyone. I'm glad you fixed the chair.
Chris has already started. Yeah, I know, mate. It's one of those things. Chris has said, "Rubbish. Stop drinking in the morning." That's the reason that I'm late. So, I hope I've not sort of taken the overview of what we're going to chat down a specific road or made it sound different to where you were hoping it's going to go, Rich. But I think, mental health is something that as a society is very in the news, and I think it's become very necessary for us to acknowledge that there are mental health difficulties as a society. And I think with disability, there are specifics that are going to be more relevant to a disabled person than disabled person. But I think also it's really for you to share your personal story, because we're all so different. Like, I know I have good days and bad days, and I have coping mechanisms, and I think it's just great we can raise awareness of this, and really for you to just give that personal story. So if you want to just start off with a bit about you and your background, but also some of the challenges you've had, we'll then start to bounce it all around.
Yeah, sure. So like you say, all our stories are very different, and I think with disability, it's a very obviously such a broad subject, and we're all sort of kind of at different stages. Like for me, I was diagnosed with a muscle wasting condition at the age of 16, and up until then, I didn't really have any clue that. Well, I was slightly behind people at sport. But I still played lots of football, lots of tennis. I was still very active child, and at the age of 16, to go from being told kind of you had tight tendons in your legs to then after about a year being told actually it might be something else, and then eventually I was diagnosed with Becca muscular dystrophy. So the impact was huge, and to be honest, at first it was probably more just like a shock kind of factor. So a lot of the things I was worrying about were more the physical things in the future. So it was more all about really, I won't be able to do this, I won't be able to do that. And it was more really about, like I say, those physical kind of aspects. But then I didn't realize that I'd had problems with mental health till about 5 years ago, when it all kind of came to a head. So I'd been obviously diagnosed at 16. I just sort of carried on, tried to keep up with all my friends, didn't really sort of come to terms with it, took a lot of my frustrations and anger out on family, probably I isolated myself a lot from friends, and they were kind of my coping mechanisms. But because I wasn't kind of getting the frustrations out there in perhaps a more productive way, it actually made things a lot worse. Around 5 years ago, so I'm now just nearly 35, I basically just had to stop work and everything. I currently I've been working as an assistant bank manager for the last 12 years, and I just decided that I needed to do something because something just wasn't quite right.
Thank you for sharing all that. And I think, sorry to cut you off, Rich. I was just going to say that one thing for me that's quite important to acknowledge in the bigger picture is the thing around acquired disability. So, like, for me, I've got a similar like condition to you in the sense of I've got spinal muscular atrophy. It falls under muscular dystrophy, but I've basically had to have a wheelchair since day dot. So that getting used to being weaker and needing more support, and I don't know where you're at the moment with your condition, but in terms of like all the equipment, all that sort of stuff has been forever. So I'm like, my identity has always been around those sort of considerations. Whereas, as you're saying, like till 16, none of that was really in your mind and becoming a thing for you to get it. So I'd imagine for you, there was a massive thing around the mental health of just accepting that you were diagnosed with this condition and all that may or may not entail for your life. I mean, have you got some sort of thoughts on that acquired disability versus always having had the disability?
Yeah, so probably in the last year, I've probably found that I can connect more about my mental health issues with kind of people that have had accidents. It's kind of got that same kind of shock factor. It's not, it's not like I've had an accident, but it's like you've all of a sudden been kind of handed this disability, and it's kind of like you've just got to then completely change. Kind of, it is like changing who you are. I'm a completely different person to who I was, obviously, before the diagnosis, and I know that. I know who I was before, and I know who I am now, and it's like kind of, it's really has changed the way I look at everything. And then once I've had more clarity with my mental health and been able to go, like, kind of think straighter, I've been able to actually use it as something productive. And like a lot of people say, I wouldn't go back to not having muscular dystrophy, which I never thought I'd say, but it's true.
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of when you think when you started to get weaker and there was a sort of deterioration around your physical strength, like what you mentioned some of the physical, practical things, and then the sort of mental, emotional. Can you just break a bit more of that down? So what sort of things did change for you on both of those levels?
Yeah, so I'd probably say a lot of it was I didn't know I was doing it really, but I was kind of I was hiding my condition as much as possible. So I was avoiding, like, I'd go out with my friends still, and I was drinking quite a lot and everything, and you'd be on these nights out, and I'd be avoiding stairs or avoiding getting up from a table when people were watching me, because I knew that I wasn't quite the same as everybody else. And as those things started to impact me more and more, I think that's when I started to really isolate, because I thought, if I'm out there, people will see this, but if I'm kind of isolated away, no one's going to see this, and it's almost like it's not there. And that was my way of protecting myself. But obviously it wasn't a healthy thing, because the more I isolated, the darker place that I went to. And eventually things came to a head later on.
So Ross has said, I think those of us who know different have often a positive mental health. People who, as you say, acquire it impacts them differently, and you can see the challenge. Yeah, but I think probably there are people that have always had a disability and have some mental health challenges. And then the question is that because of the disability, or is that, like we said at the beginning, people are having mental health challenges in everyday life, disabled or not. So I think whenever we're drawing distinctions and labels, it is just generalizations and observations. And it's back to the point we also made, Rich, that every individual is different. But it sounds like Ross is broadly agreeing with our sort of point about within the disability specific, there is that overcoming the change of physical aspects, but the change of identity as well. And then Chris is saying, Rich, did your friends change their view of you? It's an interesting question.
Yeah, I think they did. I think close friends now may have changed their view of me, previously, but then as I've got older and as I've kind of changed and come out of this kind of period where I was really struggling, they've realized the difference. So I think they've realized, oh, actually, we were probably saying, you know, why is he isolating himself? Why is he keeping himself away, being antisocial, that sort of thing? But actually now they realize why. But before, probably in the time, you know, they wouldn't have realized. And, you know, I probably did. I lost friends and yeah, over that period. And that was due to me, you know, isolating and keeping myself to myself. And, you know, it has an impact on every aspect of life. So relationships, your family, everything. It's not just impacting you, it's impacting all those around you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark, who quite a timely moment, because we're going to come on to Access Rating shortly, that you're one of the co-founders of Access Rating, Mark, but says, gosh, I do that, i.e. not getting up from a table because I didn't want people to notice me, almost pissed myself once. So yeah, and I think again, it's different levels as well. Like I've always been in a wheelchair, so
Yeah.
there's always been a pretty obvious, I have a disability, I'm in a wheelchair. But I can certainly remember when I was at university that there was a lot of my mentality, which was that I'm not disabled, even despite the bloody obviousness of it.
Yeah.
I would still try to cover some things up or not acknowledge certain aspects that I had to be more aware of. And I remember one of my mates at uni, Rich, Grimsby Rich, we called him, he pulled me to one side and he just said, like, you know, it doesn't need to be that you go into the victim mentality or the chip on the shoulder mentality of being disabled. But on the other hand, you can't ignore certain parts of it. And I guess in the end, like in life, it's balance, isn't it? That if there's a healthy balance of being proud of our identity and knowing what we can do, but knowing what we can't do, there's probably a broad philosophy for disabled or non-disabled people there as well. But yeah, I think we all try to cover up, and I suppose that runs into, is that because we fear judgment from society as a general point, and like we're saying with your friends, the fear that they're gonna, you know, push us away or not feel the same about us because we have this different angle. And also you mentioned about your job, so how has that played out when you say you've been a bank manager? Was it a bank manager, assistant bank manager?
Well, yeah,
was the title.
Yeah, so I'm now an assistant bank manager, but I've worked in retail banking and call centres before. But yeah, so I've been in retail banking 12 years, so working in a branch-based scenario. And yeah, it's well, one thing is because I work for quite a big bank, it means that they can provide me with the support that I need, and they are a very supportive company. So luckily for me, I've been able to, when I've needed time off, I've been able to have the time off and not feel that, you know, guilt that I need to get back to work. You know, I've been able to, you know, I've had problems with my shoulders and things. I've been adjusted to my wheelchair, and also I'd kind of been adjusting to my mental health problems as well, and I'd had quite a bit of time off in that period. But I'd been supported all the way through and offered lots of different support within the company. So really, like me, if anyone was out talking to me saying, oh, what career would you think of as somebody with a disability? And despite me wanting to say, do what you want, do what your kind of talents go to, you know, my heart would probably be saying that, but my head would probably be saying, look for somewhere that can support you with what you need, because it does make a massive difference to your working life. And I can say, despite me it wasn't like my plan to go and work in banking, but because of the way they've supported me, it's made my life a lot better for it. And I'm able to do lots of these different things that I'm doing now that I wouldn't have been able to do before in another job, probably.
Yeah, nice. I've got a couple of comments now. So Chris says, banker, I'm off. And then Ross has come in and said that we are okay. We are key workers right now. And obviously you know Ross.
Isolation.
I was going to say, you know Ross through the bank that you've been working for that you mentioned. So I know you both have got a lot of positive things to say about how, it can be where a business and an employer is supportive of someone with a disability. And I think that's great to hear a good story, because I'm sure there are some horror stories where people have had sort of a deterioration or an acquired disability, and they've just not felt, in the first case, they're not felt able to share what's going on the health side for fear of what might happen. And then in some cases, when people have done it, they've had not the best support and response from their employer. So it's great to hear you've had a more positive. So yeah, and then Ross has put, or is it? Yes, Rich, whoop whoop. And then Chris has come out with
Ross is saying that because Ross was one of the main people. I won't go too far into it, but Ross was one of the main people that helped me when I was struggling a lot. So he's been a big part of actually the changes.
Yeah, no, I appreciate sort of some certain things on the professional side, so you can't say publicly, but yeah, I'm aware that you and him have had that interaction, and it sounds like a very positive one as well. So so I suppose the next thought really is, if you've had a good experience of employment, what's brought you into Access Rating? Obviously it's not because it was all bad and shit and horrible at the other side of life with the banking job, but yeah, just tell us a bit more about what is Access Rating and what are you up to with that now?
Yeah, so I'm still doing the assistant bank manager stuff as well. This project came about through, I've been doing quite a bit of community work, quite a bit of fundraising for muscular dystrophy, activities and so on, and I just started to mix in lots of different circles. Basically, I went to a charity ball, and I met a gentleman there called Mark Esho, who's just been on there commenting below. Basically, we got talking because I'd said that I'd always liked tennis, and I'd just started using my wheelchair. So there's Mark with his plug on the screen.
We'll allow that, Mark.
We'll allow that.
Good.
So basically we met, we were talking about tennis. He said, oh, well, have you ever tried wheelchair tennis? And obviously I was just into my wheelchair, and I'd started a bit of wheelchair rugby, just because someone had kind of said, oh, go on, go and have a go. And at the time I thought, yeah, okay, let's go and see what I can do. And he said, oh, wheelchair tennis might be for you if you enjoyed it when you were a kid. So we connected that way. That Mark introduced me to wheelchair tennis. He got me back playing again. And then it was just one random afternoon. And the funny thing is, I think this idea that I actually spoke to you about. I think we had a brief chat on Facebook about it, and I'd said that I'd had this idea, and you said, well, lots of people have tried these type of things. It's quite a hard thing to master. So I then thought, well, I'm going to have a go. So I went to Mark and had a chat with him and said, I've had this idea where I've seen, hygiene rating on lots of different places, cafes, hotels, restaurants. And my question was, why isn't there an access rating? Why can't we have something visual that can give you a bit more confidence going to places? So Mark said, well, right, okay, meet me down the pub. So we went for a little bit of a pint and a meeting down the pub. 4 pints later, and we decided that access rating was going to be a social enterprise that we were going to use to use to basically support access anxiety and reduce access anxiety, because that's something that I'd made a big thing about, in terms of that's the thing that I'd really struggled with. We decided what we were going to do is we're going to create an app where the users can, or disabled people, or really anyone, can go around and rate and review the access of hotels, bars and restaurants, first of all. So we created the app, and that's now available on the App Store and Google Play. You can download that and submit your own personal access ratings. And we just felt it was a way of empowering the disabled community and basically giving everyone else the voice, because we put a lot of stuff online on Facebook, on lots of different channels about how good or maybe how bad access is, but I think we can use that information as a real strong point to actually drive a change in the way businesses think about access for everyone.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, no, it's been great to watch. As you say, we spoke about it a while back, and my words were not, and you know this, but just for everyone else's point of view, it wasn't to say don't do it. It was just be aware it is, a challenge to get it off the ground, and it's been amazing to see the progress that you've made with the team, with Mark and everybody involved. So, I mean, what for you getting it off the ground? What have been the challenges? What are the challenges at the moment?
Probably the main challenge probably that's come from it more recently is really finding your audience, really finding that audience of who is going to be kind of who needs this, who will find it useful, and how we can kind of use that information to support businesses to make positive changes to their access. When I say finding our audience, initially when we started, or still a bit now, we really were thinking of that subject of access for everyone. So kind of saying we need to really get into that able-bodied area and say, it's about you as well. It's not just a thing about disabled people in wheelchairs, because disability can happen to anyone. But that is the toughest thing, I think, because if you put it out there in the disabled world, they love it. Everyone loves it. I use it myself. My friends use it. But as soon as you get into that able-bodied area, it's difficult to kind of make that synergy between the two. But I think that's a good thing to try, because we have to kind of move away from having these kind of separate groups. I think we have to put more of a togetherness there, because we're out in the community with everyone. We're not just out there with disabled people. We're out there with everyone from every background. So we need to make sure that everyone understands where we're coming from.
Yeah, cool. There's a couple of comments coming from Ross. So he said, I still think TripAdvisor would be an excellent, suitable, catchy sister site for TripAdvisor. I was actually talking about tomorrow, we're actually launching quite an exciting project. So there'll be more about that tomorrow. But we were talking about wording and disability in a meeting yesterday. And I was saying that cripple was and is a bad word, but it's almost becoming a reclamation. So there's Crip Camp, the film on Netflix, is like disabled people can use it because it's like reclaiming the language. So there's a whole, I find it fascinating, the whole sort of language area and how it can be discriminating and negative and oppressive, but also how language can be empowering and liberating as well. So anyway, Ross goes on to say, on a serious note, whilst everyone is in lockdown, think of the local and not so local places you've been and review them on access rating. You have more time now than normal. Go into great detail and be as specific as possible. So what are your thoughts on that one, Rich?
Yeah, I think what with access rating, like we're trying to work with a lot of the other guides and things as well, and talk to them about kind of the things that they've kind of the barriers and the positive things they've found while doing their various projects. So yeah, in terms of access rating, it's about that voice. So if you're feeling frustrated, if you're feeling anxious, if you've had those anxieties, it really is the place to put it. And that's another thing, it's kind of almost like a mental health tool, because how I see it is, years ago when I had these anxieties, if there was somewhere I could have put it after I visited somewhere, there might have been a way of actually that company seeing how I felt and doing something about it. And I think in this kind of day and age, I think if we get that information and we go to a company and say, look, this is how 100 people are feeling about access, and this is the difference impact it makes to them, and with these small changes, you can actually, one, have more customers coming in, and two, improve the life of somebody else, and improve the community. So it's got a real big community piece to it as well. So what we have done is, obviously we've got the app, and we're letting obviously people submit their ratings and get their voice heard. And then the other thing we're doing is we're working with a lot of the special needs schools. We've partnered with one in Leicester, where we're actually working with disabled students to find them work experience and give them confidence building classes, because the way we see it is kind of that we want to work it from kind of the young, well, say the younger people upwards, and give them our kind of experience. So perhaps they don't have to go through all those things that we've had to, and perhaps they can you know, kind of have a little bit more confidence to come out of their shell and talk more about maybe mental health and things.
Yeah, and right on, because Mark was wanting us to talk about that, so that was very in sync. And yeah, I mean, what's fascinating to me is the way that, you know, you've got your personal story where there's been the mental health adjustment, and the sort of looking at anxiety from perspectives that you had, and then you've channeled that into something that I'm sure your life is a lot richer and positive for having this project to work on. But the actual point of the project is that it takes away that anxiety of worrying about accessibility or inaccessibility. But then, as you're saying, with the school project you're doing, you're going another step further and just trying to give that next generation of disabled kids the insights and the support to not have the same pitfalls or challenges that our generation has had. So it's a very all-encompassing project, really, isn't it, with access rating?
Yeah, and I think, and that was the main thing behind it. We wanted to be supporting more and more people. We didn't just want it to kind of be, you submit a rating and that's kind of it. We obviously wanted it to be making a difference. And you know, if we can make a difference to the access in venues across the country, fantastic. If we can make a difference to someone's mental health by giving them an area to submit their frustrations, again, brilliant. And if we can also just help even one disabled student find work experience or get a placement, then really we've done over and above what we kind of started off with. But we hope, you know, that it expands and we can help more and more people. And it has to be that way. We have to be helping people along the way, because otherwise it would be pointless, to be honest.
Yeah, agreed. And Ross is making a point about one thing with an app is it can provide a sort of keyboard warrior mentality, and then there's a benefit to telling the owner there and then in person. So I mean, that as a point, agreed. Like, if you can give feedback as a disabled customer to the owner yourself, you should. It's not negating that possibility, but obviously in rating a place, it's giving information to other disabled people as to how good or bad or not that they are. So obviously I think we're starting to get into a point. You watched that with Gavin, didn't you, yesterday, around Neat Box and the welcome app. I don't foresee that there's a like for like with his apps and your apps, but I think there's similarities, right? There's a thing about connecting the disabled community with businesses, getting businesses to be more accessible, giving more confidence to disabled consumers. But from that perspective of the sort of business model and the business side, how have you, or where are you at the moment with access rating, of how it's going to lean in and support the business side of things?
So what we're going to do is actually, so let's just say there's a hotel and they receive, well, at the minute what we're saying is if somewhere receives 3 negative reviews, we are going to contact that company and ask them whether they want us to support them with some of their access needs. We do have another director, Jignesh, who's a basically an auditor. So he can complete an access audit and give them a report to then see whether we can, like, they can look at improving things, and we'll then support them with you know, connections to companies that might be able to give them discounts with wheelchair ramps and different things, and hopefully make those changes. Because a lot of the time people, they'll just say, well, we don't want to spend the money, but it doesn't always have to be big money, and they don't always have to be huge changes. And the other thing is, it's leaning on the side of, well, you know, we're going to give you more people coming through the door. And the way we see it is, coming out of this isolation period, well, they're going to need a lot more customers coming through the door, because obviously every company really has struggled. So we see it as, when we come out of this isolation, saying, you know, make changes to your business because we can welcome more customers in, and that hopefully will be the factor that makes them make changes.
Agree. There's a couple of from Becca. So yeah, I was going to say Becca and Chris have both sort of said similar points about it being not, you know, because you're not in London, are you? You're in Leicestershire, but just sort of in Leicester itself, yeah. So it's going to be more of a countrywide thing, not just a London-centric thing. And are you going to be going as much into rural areas as into cities?
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea is that the more feedback we get, and the more people that need help, the more we can kind of use that to say we need to expand. And hopefully people will help us with funding and grants and things like that to get it done, because it's a social enterprise. The funds will be going back into the social enterprise to then enable us to expand some of the work we're doing within the special needs schools. So it's a win-win all round, because, you know, you'll put your access rating in, we'll do the work with the business, and then the business will hopefully pay us to do the work that we need to do. And then that money comes back into the system, and we start then supporting kids with the confidence building classes and their work experience, and giving them more opportunities. So it goes full circle in that respect.
Yeah, it's as you say, the social enterprise part is that there's the app itself is sustainable when it does obviously have social impact aplenty, but some of the money that is brought in from the business consultancy or the business audits and the general help you give to business, that gets reinvested into the schools and the, you know, working with younger disabled kids for the future, right?
Yeah, and that's the big goal.
Yeah, no, I love it. That's great. Bigger picture stuff. So Ross saying about the purple pound is huge. Different figures from different research, but it's at least 250 billion is the spending power of disabled people, otherwise known as the purple pound. So yeah, I totally agree with you there, Ross. The purple pound is huge. And he's saying that disabled people are brand loyal. Once we find a business and a brand that caters for us as disabled people, but also, you know, generally as a brand we like, in the sense that they're the style of shoes as well, or the restaurant with the food we like. You know, it's not only about whether a brand is accessible or not, there's the other consumer elements. But on both fronts we are very, very brand loyal. Once we find something that works, because for so long not a lot was working for us, we will stick with that brand, you know, for life or for a long time. So yeah, that's a really good point. Becca's saying our local pub has been great, and we are currently campaigning for a disabled toilet because my husband has to use the ladies' loo in Radstock near Bath. So yeah, like if that business was to not only have the accessible loo in the ladies, but have it that it was unisex and or whatever appropriate answer there are plenty of solutions. Then Becca and her partner would obviously go there more and tell other disabled people come to this pub because it's a great pub and it's got great access, and they would rate it on access rating, right, Rich?
Yeah, that's right. And it's about encouraging those changes to happen. But the other thing is businesses don't realize how much they're missing out on, like in terms of how they'll say, oh, well, it's not many people, but you don't know how many people that haven't gone into that pub because of the exact reason. And now, now I know that name of that pub. It's like in my radar now. It's like when I go to Bath, there's a pub near Radstock that hasn't got a disabled toilet, so I'm going to research that, and I won't go to it. So it just shows you that actually the impact for a company not having those people in there is like losing a customer a day. So you wouldn't actually turn away a customer a day. So that's interesting. And I think she's just put a point about funding. It's a tough one, but it does depend on obviously the size of the business. But it also depends, I think, on the owner and where they put access as that priority. I think money's one thing, but I mean, we need to put really the access of a human being over really a cost, because you're actually helping someone to improve their life, and you're letting a customer in that's going to actually give you money to kind of sell your beer or meals or whatever. So I think funding's always a point that people come across, but it shouldn't just be about funding.
No, I mean, the one side is that if I was to go to the same, say, pub every week and have a couple of drinks and a dinner, like, that's going to add up to a lot of money in a month, a year, or a lifetime. So even one customer can almost maybe not pay off an absolute constructual change, but equally it might do like Ross said, a ramp at his barber's. A few haircuts later, they've already got their money back. But there are aunts, I think, that can help with being more accessible. And if not, you could like fundraise from the community. But as you touched upon earlier, Rich, it's not always a lot of money to be more accessible. They might just rejig the toilet where accessible loo is a unisex toilet, because then you're just saying that, literally, if you're a guy or a man or a woman, you can go into that accessible loo. And so again, we've not been to the pub, we don't know the details, but I do think that it's as much about how you sort of market and dress it up as accessible that makes disabled people feel more welcome.
Yeah, that's right. And it's about having that sense of feeling welcomed into somewhere. It really ease your anxiety, and I think that really does make a big difference as well.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we're getting near to 10 to 1, so we don't need to jump off straight away. But in the last 10 or so minutes, was there any other sort of key points you wanted to mention? Obviously, we've given the link, and a general call to action is for people to download the app and, like Ross said, even retrospectively review places that you normally go to. I think it's a great idea. But yeah, I mean, maybe just share a bit more about kind of where you're at and what the future holds, and any sort of thoughts to the coming months and years.
Yeah, so I think at the minute we, like Ross has said there, that while the isolation period's happening, we need everyone to take the opportunity to review those places that they've been to and give them that rating, because your rating's then going to help somebody else who will look at the app and say, oh, I'm going to go there today. Good thing on it as well is that it does have geolocation, so it will show you the places nearby to wherever you are in the UK. So you'll be able to see any nearby places that have got ratings. So it might help you when you're going out for lunch, going out for a drink, trying to think of somewhere to stay locally to wherever you are at that particular time. So that's another great use for it. One thing I did just want to go through is just something that we did last night, which was basically a survey. So and the actual information's come back really quick. So we've actually got like the results today of this survey that we did about isolation. And I thought it was a good moment to kind of talk about that, just because we were talking about the mental health and isolation piece.
Perfect.
And basically, we sent a survey out to 120 able-bodied people, or friends and family, to get an idea of how they felt during this isolation period. And the results came back, and we were quite, to be honest, I think we thought this was going to happen, but when you see it in like kind of percentages, it's quite interesting. So out of the 120 people, nearly 60% of those felt lonely in the last week through isolation. 77% of those thought they had some sort of impact on their mental health, whether it was minimal to a great deal. And 92% of those were concerned about the effects of their long-term mental health if the isolation period continued. And the thing I thought that was interesting about that is that, like, a lot of disabled people I've spoke to have kind of said, well, this is kind of us. This is what happens to us on a everyday kind of level. We've all had to kind of go through these periods at times due to the fact that we can just be isolated by our surroundings. And I think when I see those things come out, I think it's going to be such an interesting time now to actually make those connections between that world that they see themselves in and our world, and actually say, well, you've been in it for a bit. How did it feel? When they kind of say those sort of results, I felt lonely, I was struggling, all those things, there might be a little bit more empathy in both areas. So I just thought that was a really interesting thing to say. Obviously, I wanted to talk more about the access rating stuff, but I think the main thing I'd say is, accessrating.com. We obviously have the app that you can find on Google Play and the App Store. So by all means, download it, submit your reviews, join our Facebook groups. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, and everything's gradually growing. So what we want you to do is we also want you to give us feedback. So anything that you think, do you know what, access rating could maybe do this? Let us know, talk to us, let's communicate, and let's make things right. And the other thing is, any companies that want to collaborate, I've spoke to Gavin that you had on yesterday. We're very much all about collaboration, and so are a lot of these other companies and individuals. So come to us, collaborate, let's do something positive. I think that's the main thing that I want to say today.
Yeah, that's a really nice place to start to. So, I'm wholeheartedly in agreement that there are businesses and everyone's got to earn enough to put food on the table, or even for the business just to be sustainable in terms of all of its general cost. That's all a given. Yeah. But I think that at the same time, it's all about collaboration, all that kind of stuff. We've got a question just coming, I think it's worth addressing. So, Rob, sorry, late to the party. What is the difference between this app and, say, Ewan's Guide, Access Advisor, Access Able, Genuine Question? I mean, I think that was my point to you when we spoke, Rich, wasn't it? That there are similar things going on. Yeah. How do you see the similarities and differences with the ones being mentioned?
So the difference I see with certainly Ewan's Guide and Accessible is that they are very detailed guides, and they have a lot of detail, which is great. It's useful. I use it. Everybody else that I know uses them. But ours is about ratings. So ours is about ratings and reviews, and that's the main thing. You can use it as a guide because you can see how people have experienced things when they're in these different places. But this is about getting your voice heard, and it's about getting that voice as a big thing to say, this is what's going on and this is where we're at. With Access Advisor, I'd probably say we're quite similar. However, we do obviously have the app that reviews at the minute over 100,000 hotels, bars and restaurants, more specifically, so in those areas. So we're currently just in those categories, and we haven't expanded out of those yet until we can kind of get that big amount of data But yeah, I'd say it's more just that we're a ratings product, and Ewan's Guide, Accessible, Access Advisor, they're more of the detail, which is great. You know, that's what we like to see, a mixture of everything to help each other.
Yeah, and I think Gavin said yesterday, didn't he, that he points to other, apps even when they're similar, because it's just about sharing information, and in the end, it's sort of the community side. So that there'll be reviews on one app that aren't on another app, and vice versa. And so in the end, it's just about the more information, the better. But I think and that's what I was saying to Gavin yesterday. I mentioned it to Rob at Access Advisor, and we've been talking as well, Rich, that maybe there's an overarching campaign that is independent of the apps or the businesses that just rallies the community to really, raise more awareness about what sort of offers there are. But maybe more so on the business side, there's maybe a potential more that there's a campaign to get the businesses to engage in all what's going on as well. But essentially to have sort of a unified campaign that are all collaborated as well.
I didn't quite get the last bit.
Yeah, but basically, the like all of the apps in play could collaborate to do something in a more public campaign way. So it would raise awareness of the issues, and then in the end, people would obviously download all of the apps or particular apps or whatever. That's up to the customer, isn't it? But it might just be about pooling resources together to raise more awareness.
Yeah, there's lots of people working on lots of different aspects of it, and they've all got different kind. It's like with the Welcome app yesterday, Gavin seemed to have quite a good knowledge of visual impairments, which as a wheelchair user, I'm not familiar with obviously that area, so we can all learn off each other in terms of our varied experiences.
Exactly.
And with Welcome app, Welcome app's about customer service, Access ratings about ratings. So if you think about it, if a customer goes in and has a better experience through Welcome app, then they will then put a rating on Access rating that's positive. We then feed it back to the company, and it's a win-win for everyone involved. So I think there's a lot of synergies and collaborations with people that are going on, I think it's important. I think it's important we all use our skills to create this one voice that we're going to be making change. And we've got to drive that change, because clearly with the issues still going on, I mean, in that Netflix series, that Crip Camp series, which I've seen, I don't know whether anybody else has, but in that they're talking about some of the issues that are still going on to this day in the UK. So we need to certainly all work together to get this change going through, because someone's not listening somewhere. That's my thought.
Yeah. I mean, so there's a mention there. Have you thought of getting an MP on board? Is that something you've thought of at all, Rich?
We've not thought of that specifically, but we are, for example, we're in Leicester, so we're working with a lot of the close-knit community in Leicester, and things like that I think will naturally happen.
Cool. And Ross is saying about, I'm not sure anyone or any app has nailed it. One of you can make it happen. TripAdvisor is the #1 for potentially non-disabled. Someone needs to be that for disabled people, and then he's done his hashtag TripAdvisor. I mean, I think that's where I see it, that probably ultimately there will be one app where in the end that's the go-to app. Although, social media, you've got Twitter and Facebook and, Instagram, and now there's TikTok. So I think there's always space for different apps with different features and different USPs. But I also think that down the road there might be that one or two really take the market, but that would still be through the collaboration with the other apps and the other founders. So you may end up down the road with mergers and things like that. But I think at the moment it's great that it supports each other and making a difference. And, you know, kind of work itself as it happens.
Yeah, there needs to be, in my opinion, there just needs to be some things that are recognised by both by all the community. So it's important as much to talk about all these different things that we're up to with disabled people. It's really important as well we talk to those that talk with people as much as we can that aren't affected by these access issues and access anxieties, and explain to them that, you know, it's about everyone, it's about all of us. And that's kind of a thing that we're trying to promote is, you know, talk to everyone about whatever you're doing, and change will come, because people will, once people sort of buy into the kind of, you know, your stories and get a bit more background about who you are, people will just start to say, well, do you know what, let's make a change to access. There's some big companies in the UK, and you know, there's some very subtle changes they could make to improve access, and I think, well, it's a no-brainer for a lot of them to just get on board and get it done.
Yeah, agreed. All right, mate. I don't know. I might have broke up a couple of times. I don't know if
Yeah.
I started there, but the internet seems to have gone a little bit slow. Yeah. So apologies, I got a little bit clunky, but I've been holding up. We've had some really good engagement, Rich. There's a lot of people very taken by your story, by the app can be and all it is doing. And I think, you know, onwards and upwards, mate. And I think what we've just talked about before, it's good to understand other apps and what else is going on. But I think most of all, I say the same to other influencers that are doing like blogging and Instagram. Like, we all have a unique voice. We all have to speak up. And the more the community feel confident to talk about issues and talk about solutions, we're more likely to be heard by government and heard by businesses and brands. So I think we're at a point where more innovation, the better, more collaboration, the better. But obviously, most of all, just want to thank you for coming on today and for all you're doing with access rating. It's a really exciting time at the moment.
It is. Thanks for having me on today. And obviously, one thing I will say is, just like, if you don't feel like you can be vocal like Ross was in his Barbers about getting a ramp, then stick a rating on access rating with your feelings of what we need to do, and let's see whether anybody starts driving that change. So yeah, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Cool. Well, yeah, we'll be in touch again soon. Obviously, I'm excited to be on board now with access rating, which I think, you know, it's good to mention from a transparency perspective. But I think also my whole role with the Daily Sib is to just raise awareness of all this kind of stuff. So, you know, we over the months we will hear from some of the other apps as well. But on a personal level, I'm very excited to be involved with you guys and to help in any way I can to access rating.
Yeah, I think that's the first time anyone's heard that. So yeah, watch this space, people.
Yeah, indeed. Watch his face. Everyone, thanks for joining today. Tomorrow, there is some other big news and big announcements being made. So tune in tomorrow at 12 for a bit more about influencer marketing and a project we're doing around getting big brands more engaged with the disability community. And obviously, as you well know, Rich, that all of that stuff, it just all feeds in with everything that's going on in the community. So I think despite Corona and COVID-19 and all the frustrations and the worries of the lockdown, there is a lot going on of hope and optimism. And I think once this virus passes, it's a good time for disability rights and inclusion.
Yeah, we have to all remain as positive as we can, and you know, we'll come out of this period stronger. I think if anyone's strong enough to deal with this situation, it's going to be the disabled community, because I just find us so strong when we sort of work together. So yeah, let's all just remain positive and try and come out of this the best we can.
Yeah, agreed. And Ross was saying about trying to get the viewers up on the Daily Sib. So obviously everyone that's tuned in, do feel free to share the replay. This does stream on LinkedIn and Twitter and YouTube, as well as the Facebook numbers that you're seeing. So I know that I've been getting sort of 600 to 800 viewers every day across the platforms. And obviously everyone watching on the replay, I hope you've enjoyed it, and do feel free to tune in for a live if you want to get your thoughts and questions involved in the conversation. But I think it's a lovely sort of number of people getting involved with the comments and questions. It's great. We can give everyone a bit of airtime. And obviously, if you're interested to get on like Rich has been today, and you fancy sharing your story and any projects that you're involved in, then it'll be a pleasure to get more of you on as guests in the coming day week. So we'll sign off for now. Thanks again, Rich, and I'll see you all again tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Cheers.